Well, good morning, Rise Church. Good morning to those of you who are watching online. We're glad you're here too. Let me tell you guys something. I'm going to dive right in that I know without a shadow of a doubt. I believe with everything in me, because I see it all the time, that this is a life-giving church. It's a life-giving church. And I feel a little guilty because in my position, I feel like I get a front row seat to all the things that God is doing here at Rise Church, to all the life change, to all the ways that all of you are living out mission, not just in these walls, but outside these walls. And kind of like Nathan talked about last week, he did such a good job. We are not to be people that simply hear what God says through his word, but when we hear it, we are supposed to then do it. We're supposed to apply it to our lives. We're supposed to live it out. And I've seen this proven over and over again in my own life, in the lives of many of you, of those closest to me, that when we look at what God says and then we actually go live it out, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's hard, we see him give life to others. We see him do the impossible. I'm going to be in Matthew 28 in just a couple of minutes if you want to turn there and get ready. Matthew chapter 28. But we as a church have been doing this series together that we're calling Hearing God's Voice. And we've been looking at all the different ways that you can hear God speak. And the place this came from, just in case some of you are just joining us, is I've been asked so many times over the last year, hey, Jarrod, how do you hear God speak? What does that sound like? How do you know it's him speaking when you feel like you hear the voice of God? And so the last few weeks, we've been going through all these different ways that God speaks. And the primary way, the most important way possibly, is through the Word of God. And we've talked for several weeks now about how those of you that want to hear God speak, but you don't feel like he ever speaks in your life, but this is always closed, that's why. You have to be willing to open the Word of God and actually receive and read and hear the words of God if you want to hear the words of God. And so this is also the way that you discern whether you're hearing the voice of God from other places, because God still speaks through his Spirit as well. But how do you know that's his Spirit talking? Well, you got to check it with this. We talked about that for a whole message a couple of weeks ago, how God speaks through his Spirit and what that voice sounds like, that he's always with us through his Spirit, and he's the counselor and the guide and the teacher and the helper, and he's with us, and he'll never leave us nor forsake us. We also hear from God through his people. Sometimes he speaks to us through people, but you got to make sure that the people who you're listening to are actually close to God and that they know, love, and follow Jesus, because that's how you can tell, okay, they're hopefully speaking from God when they speak to me. We're going to get into that in the next couple of weeks in a more deep way, but today I want you to know that we are a church that wants to hear God's voice, not just for our church and not just for ourselves, but we want to hear God speak into our city, the place that we live. Visalia, Tulare. I know there's about 10 different towns represented in this room, and so I'm not going to name all of them, but you know what I mean. Your city, our cities. We want to hear what God has to say, and so today I get to share. This is a very different message than we're used to. I get to share about some of the things that I'm most excited about, that our church is involved in and actively participating in, that you need to jump into as well. And these are all kingdom things. These are all things that are close to the heart of God, and so they should be close to our heart as a church as well. These are all things Jesus himself spoke about and made very clear. Some of them are a little uncomfortable, but Jesus said specific things about them that if you're really following Jesus, we've talked about this for weeks now, what that means is you're willing to set aside anything that you prior believed, anything you felt in your heart, any way you lived, and pick up whatever he's handing you, which he's saying is the way to believe, the way to live, the way to think, and run with it. And in a world where people are constantly divided out there, outside these walls, we get to actually be united within these walls because we have the one thing that's meant to unite us, which is Jesus Christ. And he's the hope of the world, and he's still saving people today, and we get a front row seat to it, and I just can't get over that. In Matthew 28, let me read it to you. This is a very famous passage. Most of you have heard it. Verse 18, Jesus said this. It says, Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. So go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Let me back up a minute and remind you what this is, or maybe tell you for the first time if you're new to this. This is what we as Christians call the Great Commission. And the reason it's actually called the Great Commission is because there's actually 5 commissions that were given to us in the New Testament. But this one's called the greatest, and I think I have a little insight into why that might be, because it's the only one of the 5 commissions that actually uses the phrase, all authority. All authority. And it's a really big deal. I'm going to explain it to you real quick before we go further. Why is it such a big deal that Jesus stood up in front of all these people and said basically, hey, wait a minute, all eyes up here, because what I'm about to tell you is very important. And I want you to hang on to every single word. And then he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And the reason that we know these words are more powerful than you might think is because when he utters these words, you might have missed this part, this happens after his resurrection. So about 50 days ago, he went to the cross, he died, he was put in the tomb, and then he rose from the grave. And now he's walking around talking to people, and in this particular instance, he's talking to a crowd of around 500 people, eyewitnesses have recorded, showing them the scars from the crucifixion that he'd now been resurrected in power. And so now, because of that, he's able to stand up before this crowd, look them in the eye, and say, I have authority over death. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And then he goes on with the Great Commission, basically saying, and I grant you now all authority, that you might go into the world and tell the world all these things and share the good news and the victory and spread the hope that I've given to you because they need it too. And the church began to spread like wildfire. And if you study the early church, they started to meet the needs. They started to care for the orphans. They started to care for the poor. They started to meet all the needs in their societies as the different churches sprung up. And then this thing happened over the years, over the centuries, where in many places in the world, the church stopped doing the things on mission that Jesus had commanded them to do. And so to meet certain needs that the church actually, if you study church history, had been meeting so perfectly, better than any government institution ever has. Different things have had to spring up to meet needs, and they're not all bad. Some of them are very good. But the church was always meant to be God's tool for reaching and impacting and serving and loving with compassion the people who are hurting and vulnerable in the world. And that's what this moment is in this Great Commission, is Jesus 2,000 years ago telling his followers, go into all the world, and the number one primary thing you need to do is spread this message of hope, the gospel, the good news, the message of my salvation. And that is still happening 2,000 years later on the other side of the world from where that happened, even in Visalia, California. I'm going to stop for a minute and just for fun, because it just moves me to my core, and I think it will you too. If you're in this room and you were saved by Jesus Christ or baptized here at this church, would you please stand up? Yeah, give them a hand. Give Jesus a hand. Really. Thanks, guys. See, Jesus spoke these words over 2,000 years ago, and his disciples have been following and pushing his Great Commission ever since, and teaching people the good news about Jesus, and teaching people to obey the things that he commanded, inviting people to make a personal decision to follow him. And in the last little over a decade of our church's existence, we have seen over 800 people make decisions to give their lives to Jesus Christ. Last year alone, exactly 138 people got baptized right back here, publicly declaring their faith in Christ. And it's been an incredible journey over the last decade or so. But we're a church, this is why I'm sharing this with you. You need to know our identity and who we are before you join with us. We're a church that God has called to help carry the Great Commission by sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and seeing his church multiply. And it's not our church, it's his. And he gets all the glory, and he does the hard part, and we get to be a part of it. But what I want to share with you today is I want to tell you some of the exciting things that we want to be involved in as a church here in our community, in our cities, because God does this thing where he makes it very clear to us, even though we will never stop spreading the gospel as a church, even though we will never stop sharing the hope of Jesus Christ with our words and inviting people to come see what he's all about, who haven't met him yet, he also has called us as a church to be on mission. And what I mean by that is he's given us a mission, not just for what we do inside these walls when we all come together, which is one of my favorite parts of the week here on Sunday, but when we leave and go out there 7 days a week, we are to live out his mission out there as the church. And most of you have heard me say this 100 times. I'm going to say it again because it just needs to be repeated constantly. You're not sitting in a church right now. We termed that term. That's not what this says. This says every time the word church is mentioned, it doesn't refer to a building that you come to. It doesn't refer to a place that you go. It doesn't refer to an event that you attend or an organization here on earth. It refers to the people of God, the followers of Jesus Christ, living on mission for him. That's the church. And so when we leave this place today, we're not leaving church, we are the church. We're going out there to be the church on mission out there, and we have a mission. We have a mission. You see, if you're a Christ follower, if you follow Jesus, then you are going to leave this place every week and go out on mission. Because we as a church, we want to see our city completely transformed and changed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. Not that, oh yeah, there's a few churches in that town. No, we want this entire city dominated by Jesus Christ. That's what we want to see. Because there's no greater hope that the world has ever seen. And so we come here on Sunday and we pour into each other and we equip and we train and we build up and we challenge. But it's for a purpose that is greater than that. And the purpose is that then we walk out these doors and we go be the church out there. Loving people. Showing Jesus compassion to those who are vulnerable, to those who are hurting. And if you follow Jesus, that's what you're going to do when you walk out these doors every week for the rest of the time between now and next Sunday. See, there's a verb, there's an action, there's a going when it comes to following Jesus Christ. By the way, if you study the early church for centuries, there was no such thing in the original church, in the New Testament church, as people coming to faith in Jesus Christ, giving their lives to him, and then not going on mission. It was immediately tied to a going out on mission in their communities, in their cities, or elsewhere, even further away. There was no such thing as people becoming Christians back then, receiving his grace, being thankful that their sins are forgiven, and then just returning to their same old lives and living the same old way and doing the same old things and caring about the same old things. That didn't exist. It was always paired with this burden to then go out, and they all did it, and be on mission out there, and that was the main part of it. And so one of the ways that you can know and really know if you're really a follower of Jesus Christ and not just playing religious games is that there is something in you that will just simply not be okay when you run into people in your own community who are hurting. There's something in you that just will not be okay when you see giants that need to fall in our community, when you see needs that need to be met, when you see people who are going through dark times or in pain or suffering. There's a burden inside of you that aches the way that it aches in Jesus' heart. If you don't have that burden, if it's all just about you or your comfort level or your preference in music or not allowing Jesus to throw off your life a little bit and bring you out of your comfort zone and calling you to step into his mission for you, then maybe, just maybe, you're not actually even a Christ follower. And I know that sounds intense and it's not very PC, but this is not a PC church. And it's never gonna be a PC church. You need to know that. We are a Bible-teaching Jesus church. And it's always going to be all about what God says and all about who Jesus is. That's what this is about. We don't care what's popular or unpopular to believe or say. We're going to say what Jesus said. And we're going to share what Jesus shared, and we're going to try to live our lives the way he said to live our lives. Because we believe all the things he said. That we should actually do and be the things he's called us to do and be, even if it goes completely against what we've prior lived, believed, and felt. And we have a mission as his church out there every day of the week. And that for us, there is a burden that every Christian is meant to have for the people who are hurting in our own city, for the lost in our own city who do not yet know him, for those struggling, for those who need compassion and grace, and we're to love and serve them in our community. And that the church, us, are meant to go out every week and live out that mission because the city we live in needs to be drastically different because we live there. We ask this question in our leadership all the time. I'm going to ask it to you. You may have heard it before. If our church ceased to exist here in Visalia, California tomorrow, if it just vanished off the face of the earth just like that, poof, would our city notice that we were gone? Would they hear about it months later? Oh, did you know Rise Church shut down? They don't exist anymore. Or would it be an immediate felt need of, oh my gosh, that thing they were involved in and that thing they did and all the people that were loving and doing all the things out there, they just, phew, our city doesn't feel the same anymore because Rise Church isn't here. And in case there has been any confusion or miscommunication, I just want you to know that this is who we are as a church. This is the house that you're sitting in today. And so what I'm doing today is I'm challenging you and I'm inviting you to not just be a spectator, but be a participator in the kingdom of God. To not just be somebody that comes and consumes the message and the music every week, but to realize that once you leave this place, you are on a mission out there to share your life with others, to love others, to serve others, to love the least of these, to love those who are sometimes hard to love those who disagree with you. That's your mission out there, is to meet needs for people. And, you know, I want to talk about some practical ways that we as a church are going to be on mission and have been on mission, because the fruit that we're seeing come out of this church, and I'm boasting in the Lord here because it makes me emotional when I see how much God is doing through all of you. The impact this church is already having, it's not because of me. It's not because of our other pastors. It's because of this whole body. And the way that you rise up, no pun intended, every time. I hear constant stories of you out there on mission, bringing people to the gospel, inviting them into the family, serving needs out there in ways that I never dreamed of. And we're seeing things happen at Rise Church that, I got to be honest with you, you're not seeing happen in very many places right now. And it excites me. The Spirit of God is moving here and working through us, and every week we get to see so much that He's doing. It's just immense. And that's from the faith and commitment and bringing to the altar of all of you. And something that we as a church have really spent a lot of time praying for over the last few years is that we would really hear the voice of God for our city that we are placed in. That God put us in this city for a reason. We don't want to just be a church that's all about us. We don't want to be a church that doesn't love our city well. We don't want to just be a church that is the church within these walls doing our own stuff. We want to be the church out there in the community, leaving an impact on our city. And we need to ask that question of ourselves. We're a church that wants to see the kingdom of God come on earth as it is in heaven, in Visalia as it is in heaven. We don't want to be Christians. Jesus didn't tell us to be Christians who simply live the rest of their lives looking forward to eternity. No, we're supposed to bring heaven here. We're supposed to usher the kingdom in here until we get there. He makes that so clear. And so we as a church, I want you to know, we are activated out there. We're not just in here. There's a lot happening, but we don't always talk about it, and so I need to bring you into it so you can hear about it because it matters. This week alone, one of you came to me and said, hey, Jarrod, I was getting my hair cut this week, and the girl cutting my hair said, hey, my personal trainer's part of Rise Church. She keeps inviting me. Should I go? And I said, yeah. And then on the way out the door, the receptionist had overheard, and she said, hey, I'm going to come with you too. So I don't know if you're here, but hello. Welcome to Rise. One of you who works for the school district told me recently that almost every day of the week that week, you ran into a different staff person at the schools who had been touched or impacted by somebody in this church family. And they hadn't even met before. That's just really cool to hear. One of you told me this week you were wearing your Rise shirt at the grocery store. And that someone said, hey, Rise Church. And you said, yeah, are you with us? And he said, no, but I've been hearing a lot about it. Should I? He said, yes, you should. Come see what all the fuss is about. By the way, the fuss is all about Jesus. Because He's still changing lives from the inside out 2,000 years later. We get to see it. We get to participate in it. Every week of the year, doing what only He can do. He's the hope that a hopeless world needs. He has a grace that can cover a multitude of past mistakes and failures. He has a hope to give you in this hopeless world. He has a peace that passes all understanding that can only come from him. He has an unspeakable joy that you could never experience outside of him, no matter what you think will give it to you. He has a purpose for your life that makes everything that you ever needed, wanted, desired, or dreamed of as a purpose pale in comparison. And he offers that to you. But I hear so many times, literally every week of the year, that one of you has ran into someone or met someone in the community, and you started talking about your church, and you started talking about Jesus, and that's what it looks like to live on mission out there. The people that have given their life to Jesus over the last year in this very room, it's not because of me. It's because of Jesus and you who invited them in to come see what he's all about. Without fail, I hear stories. Oh, yeah, my niece got baptized at Rise Church. I've heard of that church. You know, I was going through a really dark time, and this friend came and came back into my life and started sharing some wisdom with me and some truth that I needed to hear, and challenged me, and I'm doing so much better now, and yeah, she's part of your church. I'm proud of the people of Rise Church. That's what I'm saying. Because you know what it looks like to be the church out there, not just in here. And it just moves me to my core. May it always be part of our identity as a church. We see God's kingdom alive and active around here all the time, but we also want to see it alive and active out there. Out there. Because of your generosity, because of your faithfulness, because of your sacrifices, because of your willingness to give your time to things that matter, to the causes that Jesus would tell us to give our time to. We don't want to just be a church that invites people to Sunday services, although we do see God do amazing things here every week, and those are never going to stop. We don't want to just be a church that gathers 7 days a week in homes to break bread together and pray together and be with each other. And I love our small groups. They're the bread and butter of this church. That's how you get connected to family. But we also, when we go out there, want to be on mission for Jesus Christ as the church. And that's how God does it, straight, simple. The church is God's greatest vehicle for impacting the world, period, and it's the only solution. It's the only lasting solution. I know some of you want to receive and spread hope through politics on either side of the aisle. That's not how it's going to happen. It's going to happen through the church. That's how it was always meant to happen. It can only come through Jesus Christ, and the church has that mission to carry out. So no matter what side of the aisle you're on, I'm just going to be blunt. The government is not going to solve the homelessness problem. The government's not going to solve the poverty problem. The government is not going to solve the problem of helping families who are in crisis and going through pain. God already gave the world a solution to those things, and it is the church, or it's supposed to be. So let me talk to you about just a few of the things that we're just so excited about, that we're involved in here locally, and that we want you to know about and participate in, because our people love to participate. And so we don't talk about these enough, but when you give to Rise Church, you're supporting these things. When you give of your time, these options are available to you. There might be some connections made today by God where you have exactly what somebody else needs, and that connection's going to be made because he does that around here all the time. But there are people in this room who lead those ministries that we partner with. There are people who are members of our church who even founded some of these and run them. And there are people in this room who constantly give their life away and their resources and their talents and their gifts and their time toward advancing God's kingdom through these things, toward things that have eternal impact, that because they matter to God's heart, they need to matter to us. So let me walk you through these. They're on your notes. I'm going to try to go through them in order. I might veer a little bit. But the first one that I want to share with you is really dear to my heart, and it's called Care Pregnancy Center. And we have members of our own church family, our own tribe, who are on the board there, who volunteer there, who are on staff there, including their amazing director Dana, who I just have so much admiration and respect for. She is such a great leader and catalyst for seeing God move through people's lives. I just love the way she leads. But when you volunteer with Care Pregnancy, and there's a lot of different options for you as the church, you love on young mothers, you love on young fathers. You can be a mentor, and by the way, I've been told one of the biggest needs right now is mentors to young fathers or young expecting fathers that don't have any godly men in their lives. In other words, it's not just the mothers who find themselves with an unexpected pregnancy that need love and compassion from the church, it's also the fathers, that they matter too. And this is a huge need, and it's not just the moms, it's the fathers, it's the moms too. I'm just going to say this unapologetically because I say what Jesus says. And so if you want me to walk you through that, I can do that in a different sermon. But if you believe what God says about the sanctity of life in the womb, like I do, then you believe that those are lives that should be cared for. At the same time, we are not going to ever be a church that just stands on the street corner shouting and thinking that's effective about abortion. We're going to be the one that actually comes in and recognizes the pain and the fear and the anxiety and the hurt that people are walking through in those situations, and we're going to meet them with compassion. We're going to meet needs, and we're going to walk people through things, and we're going to come to a place where we actually be the church that loves and supports them. And so here's what I want to say. There's a table out there after the service for this ministry that we love. If you want to ask questions or have conversations or hear some amazing stories, or if you want to get involved, here's the different ways you can do that. You can volunteer to be a mentor. You can volunteer to be someone that comes in and counsels and loves on people who are really struggling with big decisions in their life they're about to have to make. You can go and provide donations that these young families need that they can't afford, some of them. And at the same time, you can also receive something that maybe you need. If you, in your life, recently or in the past, ever experienced the loss of a pregnancy, whether it was through abortion or whether it was through a miscarriage, hey, I know for a fact, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, that there's pain that comes from both of those things. And it can be deep. And they provide free counseling and free mentorship and just love for people that are feeling that grief or that pain. And that's available to you. If you want to keep it really confidential, I put a QR code on your little sheet there. You can scan that. It takes you right to their website where you can request an appointment for any of the things they offer. And it's just an amazing, Jesus-following, God-loving ministry that we love to support. So take action on that. If you have any questions, go talk to them afterward. The next one I want to talk about is one of my favorites, the Visalia Rescue Mission, which we will always support. When you are a Christ follower on mission out there on the streets, and instead of just giving a handout to somebody who's homeless or a handout to somebody who is in need, but you want to actually stop and have a conversation, maybe hear some of their story or ask them a question or see who they are as a person. And instead of simply giving them a handout, which isn't always a bad thing, it's a good way to love somebody sometimes, but you also give them one of these cards we have available. And that card tells them the office hours and the places they can go and all the things available to them and the numbers they can call. Did you know that any homeless person on the street here in Visalia, that they can go to the rescue mission and 365 days a year, there's meals, beds, and showers. And on top of that, one of the things I get most excited about is something that they call the Life Change Recovery Program or the Life Change Academy. And that's where you can actually, if you're a man or woman, get off the street and actually live in a house with other men and women for up to a year while they coach you and help you get a job and help you get into your own place eventually if possible. And not only that, but you're discipled to follow Jesus Christ, which is one of the greatest things you could ever receive. I personally have driven men over there and enrolled them in the academy because there's openings right now, by the way. And after a year, I was able to meet with them for coffee after work because they're working 8 to 5 now. And that just really moves me. Another one that is just so incredible to me that I love so deeply is called My Father's House. And honestly, some would say it's one of the best kept secrets in Visalia because many of you have never heard of it. But it's also one of the most impactful things that happens in our city, hands down. Over 100 beds, split up between multiple houses, led by men who have been through the experience themselves and have wisdom and love and Jesus to pour into these individuals. And so these homes are for people that are coming out of addiction or coming out of prison or coming out of homelessness or whatever life has thrown them, and they just need help. They just need a place to land and get their life straightened out and be loved on and be discipled. And My Father's House offers that. They're almost always full. It's hard to get in because they're doing so much ministry. My Father's house is one of the most effective ministries I've ever seen and heard of, with a success rate that I'm so proud of and impressed by, of men being held accountable, challenged in all the right ways, coming out of hard situations, to the extent that not every man who applies to live in the home will even make it, but the ones who do, there's a very high percentage that are going to do just fine. I remember the story of an individual who ended up in there, and they were helping him get his life on track, and he was being discipled and learning about Jesus and growing in his faith and maturing, and he ended up getting cancer. And instead of getting him to self-sufficiency, they still allowed him to stay in the house until he passed away. Because he was part of their family, is how they worded it. This is an amazing ministry, and they get a relationship with Jesus Christ, which is one of the best things they could ever get. So Kurt and Pam are here in this room right now. I love you guys. I'm so excited about what you're doing, and we want to be even more involved as time goes by. So if you want to talk to them afterward, they're going to be out there. Please ask them questions, hear stories, pick up information, see how we as a church can be the church out there through my Father's house. There's people in this room who've led Bible studies there. There's all kinds of ways to get involved. There's a new thing that we're using, and it's incredible. If you haven't heard of it, it's called Care Portal. Let me tell you a little bit about Care Portal. In every community, there are children and families who are going through crisis. You don't always know that because you see them walking around, you see them drive, but they're in crisis, absolute crisis. And they need help. And in those same communities as those families in crisis, there are churches who would love to step up and be the church and meet needs and love families who are struggling and hurting. But we can't always connect those needs. We don't always know where they are. That's where Care Portal comes in. And so they're the connection point. And so Care Portal exists to serve hurting families who need help and children who need help. And so all the requests that go through there are vetted and put through the caseworkers and the different people that work directly with these families. And then those caseworkers, many of who aren't even believers in Jesus Christ, get to watch as the church does what the church is supposed to do. And we get to see the needs every week, and then we get to decide, what are we going to meet? So it might be a family that is not going to have any Christmas this year. It might be a family who we find out that they have 3 kids in one bedroom sleeping on a hard floor because they can't afford mattresses or a bed, and then our church steps up and delivers mattresses and a bed. There's a whole number of things, and if you look there on the notes there, I put a little chart, and that shows just our involvement so far as we've begun with Care Portal. Some of the impact our church alone has been able to make, some of the needs we've been able to meet, the kids we've been able to help, but we want to do more. We want to do more. Here's the coolest thing about Care Portal. There's a number of you who have already created your own Care Portal account under Rise Church, and any of you can do it. So if you want to log in and see those needs yourself as the church, you can scan that QR code right there, sign up, and then you'll see our Rise Church dashboard where you can see the needs right here in our community of families and kids who are struggling and say, you know what, I could meet that one. Or you could read one a week with your small group and say, hey guys, should we gather around and actually meet one of these together and be the church? And another thing that I love about Care Portal is they bring the church into the mix. So they don't go out there and take all the glory. They put the glory back on the bride of Jesus Christ, which is the church. And the church gets to make the interactions and the connections with the struggling families to have a sustaining long-term relationship instead of just giving them what they need. It's an amazing thing we're involved in. We want to do more. Go talk to them. At their table, they'll sign you right up for your own account. There's nothing involved in it other than you get to see the needs right here around us that we're trying to meet together collectively as Rise Church. And we would love for you to help out as well, or team up with a few friends in the church and do it. As most of you know, we have adopted an elementary school here in Visalia. It's one of the ones that is struggling the most, has been struggling for a while. It's called Highland Elementary. And we are spending time loving on the teachers and the staff and encouraging them. We've put on a few events for them and brought them breakfast and things like that because they have a really hard job over there. We have also stepped up, you have stepped up as a church, and we've taken a trailer full of things over there that the school found out through parents and kids that those kids really need for school that that their parents could not afford. So well done, Rise Church, on doing that. And there's a lot more coming up where you can actually volunteer at the school. I don't know if you realize this, but it's not actually that common for an elementary school to invite a church to come volunteer all over the campus, but they're inviting us. And so if you want to actually participate in that, we would love to have you. If you have some extra time on your hands, There's different levels of commitment, and we would just love to talk to you out there about how you could get involved in our adoption of Highland Elementary School. We just want to love those kids. It's simple as that. We're not there to preach. We're not there to do anything but love those kids, parents, teachers, and staff as the church. Love Inc. is here today, and Taylor is a good friend of Rise Church, and Tina, who works there, is a longtime member of Rise Church. And these connections are already being made. They have a warehouse full of stuff that people need, and even a list of people that need them, but we're struggling to get them to the people. We need more. Like, if there's some strong men in here with big trucks, come talk to us out there, because we have some things that we need to deliver, like, in the next couple weeks to families that really need them. Even if you don't have a truck, there's small things, and you can go out and see some of those that we can deliver to families in need. On top of that, if you haven't heard this yet, Rise Church is going to be starting our own on-campus food pantry within the next couple of months. And so you can donate stuff to that. Love Inc. is also going to help supply a lot of that, including some freezers. And we just have connection to a lot of families that struggle with food and groceries and all that. And so we're going to be able to put them through a process and help them. So that's going to be really cool if you want to get involved in that. Last but not least, let me tell you about one of my favorites. And I saved this one for last because today is actually National Safe Families Sunday. And if you didn't know, we are a Safe Families church, but we need more help. And so here's what a Safe Families church is if you don't know. All over the country, there are families who end up in a crisis, who are isolated and don't have anybody close to them around them. Let me give you an example of that. So let's say there's a single mom here in Visalia, and she literally has no family in town, no friends that could take her kids, no external support like many of us have, right? Something happens to me, something happens to my wife, my parents are in town, they take my kids, my sister's in town, she takes my kids. Not everybody has that. Not everybody has a church that would rally around them and help in a crisis situation. So this single mom ends up in the hospital. If there's no other option for that child, they go into the foster care system. Safe Families provides vetted, approved Christian families, Christian households, who will temporarily take that child into their home temporarily, and it's usually temporary, very temporary, until that mom can receive that child back. This could be from any kind of crisis. It could be somebody ends up in jail and there has to be a place for the kids in a loving home. It could be somebody is battling an addiction, whatever it might be, some kind of situation where the parents just are not able to do what they need to do in that moment. So not only does a Christian family take those kids in and love on them for weeks or whatever it is, but the church also rallies around that host home and provides every need that child could have to make it easier on the host family. On top of that, there's a team over here with our church that will rally around the family in crisis and help them get back on their feet or get through whatever they're struggling with. And then we also have prayer partners. And so if you want to get involved in any of those four ways, or I don't know, maybe you have a 5-bedroom house and you've been wondering what to do with it, and you could take a kid for a couple weeks at a time once in a while. Hint, hint. Go talk to somebody. We would love to tell you how you can get involved, even if you just want to have a deeper understanding of what Safe Families is. Hey, guys, there is a 98% reunification rate with Safe Families. Do you know what that means? 98% of the kids that go into a Safe Families home end up reunited with their actual family who had to give them up temporarily in a healthier situation than when they left that family. Because the church got involved. We need to be involved. I'm going to let them say it better for just a minute. Watch this quick video, and then we'll finish.
What would you do if you had a crisis in your family? Well, I would call my mom, or, my sister would take the kids, but that's really not a reality of a lot of people, and I don't think we understand how many. I would describe Safe Families as an extended family. Kind of this wraparound network of support.
You open up your home to help out that family reunite again in a better way.
There are a lot of different reasons that people rely on Safe Families. It ranged from, a mom needing daycare for just a couple weekends until she found something more stable. We've had some serious illness with parents.
We've had several children come through our home. You really just love on the child, welcome them into your home, and just love on them. Could be a weekend, could be a couple weeks, could be 30 plus days.
Being involved in Safe Families and actually stepping into someone's story has given me deep empathy for we really don't ever know truly what someone's been through or what they've gone through, what brought them to the place that they're in. I just know they need help. I just know they need extra support. Seeing people through the eyes of Christ, really, we all need help at some point in our lives. Our child placements, we've had a unique opportunity to connect pretty closely with the parents, asking them how housing is going and if they need any extra support or what needs they have coming up. And I feel like it does have a more family aspect to it when it comes to the relationship building that you have the opportunity to have with another parent. One really neat thing about Safe Families is definitely the many ways you can be involved. I have a network of support. There are people that will drop off diapers, clothing. I know that I have people available that are going to be there. It doesn't always have to look like hosting a child in your home. It can be providing daycare for someone who is hosting a child, or prayer is huge. Being a part of Safe Families within a church community is going beyond the walls of your church. So you could, go every Sunday and hear these beautiful messages about loving one another and reaching out in community. This is a way to make that a reality and put your faith to action.
If it's only about us all the time, it's just not complete. It's gotta have something else in it.
There are people outside of your four walls of your church that are just desperate for family and for love and support. And I believe it's what we're called to do as followers of Christ is look beyond the four walls of the church.
So we currently have 2 families in our church who are approved to be host families. It's not enough. We need more. But like you heard in the video, if you can't be a host family, there's a lot of other ways to help as well. We would love to talk to you out there and just share more information about that. We also have our very own Safe Families coordinator here at Rise Church that works directly between us and Safe Families to make it seamless. Her name is Allie. She'll be out there. She'd love to talk to you as well. There's just a lot more information you can get out there. And I just wanted you all to see, Rise Church, that God is doing so much in our city right now. And he can do so much more even over just the next few years because of our faithfulness, our investment, our commitment, our being on mission out there, not just in here. And one of the things that I think is happening in our city right now, and I feel pretty in tune to it, is God is getting a lot of attention. And he's getting a lot of people's attention. And it's changing lives. And he's saying, hey, don't miss what this life in my kingdom is really all about. Don't miss what I can do through you. Don't waste your time and your life out there chasing things that it's not really about. Let me tell you what it's about. Because it's not really about all these things. In 100 years, souls are what it's going to be about. Eternal impact is what it's going to be about. There's a family here in our church that hosted some Safe Families children a few years back. Those kids are still here now as teenagers at Rise Church, got saved and baptized, serving here in the church. Incredible kids. And we have an opportunity as a church, not 100 years from now, but right now, today, to start making the impact that will be felt if we weren't here. So I'm unapologetically saying to you all today that that's what this church is about. We're a church on mission. It's what our leaders are doing. It's what many of our members are doing. None of us on this staff, by the way, see this as a job. We see this as a calling. We see this as a calling. And I'm thankful for a church that sacrifices and serves and gives of their time and loves the things that God loves. And I just want you to know, in case you didn't know, that there's room at the table. There's room at the table to be on mission with us out there in all these different things. And we need to be a church that participates rather than just spectates, and contributes rather than just consumes. And there's room for all of us to participate in the things God is doing in our city. We feel like we've heard God speak what he's doing in our city, and those are the things that we want to be involved in. And so let's resource them, let's serve alongside them, let's offer our vehicles and our time, and let's get to know them. I'm so thankful that they're here today, and they're all out there. I want to challenge you not to just run straight to your car today, but to go stop and talk to some of them. Meet them, get to know them, thank them for being here with us, because they gave up a lot of time to be here for 3 services. And we're just thankful that we get to partner with them and do God's work with them. So go get more information after we sing this song. Let me pray, and then we'll go. Father, I just thank you that we as a church get to be the church and not just go to church, that we get to go out and be on mission for you, that is our life's calling. And so would you help us to do that? Would you inspire us? Would you encourage us, challenge us out of our comfort zones? Would you give each of us a burden that you carry, that we can then carry out there for people who are vulnerable, for people who are hurting, for people that need to be loved on? Help us to do that in all these ways. And I just pray that because of the people of Rise Church, that these things that matter to your heart out in our city would only grow and impact more people and meet more needs and spread the gospel more, because that is what we are all about. We love you so much, and we're so thankful that we get to do this as part of your family, as part of your kingdom, and we get to see your kingdom alive and well here in Visalia, California. We worship you now. And all God's people said.